The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook, is presented by, I don't know what I said, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for the DraftKings Sportsbook, download the app, and use promo code RTRS. Brought to you by LL Pavorsky Jewelers, where Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners go and get engaged, and the Colony Meadery, the official gluten-free booze made from honey of the process. On the show today, Larry Brown speaks about the Sixers and actually sounds coherent. Ben Simmons is working out. Alex Subers is taking pictures. Joel Embiid says he's been working out 6 days a week for 4 weeks. And at long last, the first time actually on the pod, even though he has appeared on the pod, the first time on the pod, my coworker, Lakers fan, Kobe enthusiast, 94 WIP host, former NFL All-Pro, Ike Reese joins us. He is excited to talk basketball. Ike fucking loves talking basketball. I didn't tell him about the show. And what it's like now. Coming up on June, what is it, the 25th? June 25th, Mike's script for Brotherly Love will be available from rightstoRickySanchez.com. A PDF with artwork from Abby, and all of the proceeds will go to Coded by Kids and the Providence Animal Center.
I sent it to you a week ago, and you have not said anything about it.
You know what's funny? I forgot, as I was saying that, I forgot that you had sent it to me so I could send it to Abby so she could draw something. So I will read it this weekend.
It's a bit like if I sent you a picture of my penis and you didn't respond.
Well, that makes us 0 for 2, I guess.
That's right. And a bit of a shout out to the people who've been saying that this pod is missing Mike penis content. It has been a while since I played basketball and did hurt the tip of my penis.
Right in the beginning. There you go.
Right in the beginning.
Without any further ado, Amos and the chef.
Larry, sweetie, the man is here.
Say the name. I say the name. I say the name.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Forever.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy who almost died with the guest on today's pod on his back in 2016. That is Mike Levin.
A good memory.
Yeah, you almost went over the edge.
A rare good memory of a near-death experience.
Yeah. So I guess my first question for you is, do you want to talk sumo with Sam Kravitz?
I think we opened a real Pandora's box with bowling. Now people are presenting their favorite sport to us. We have to be somewhat tethered to a Sixers podcast. We just have to be.
Well, so we got a delightful email from a listener named Sam, who was like, hey, I really like the bowling pod. We got a lot of good feedback on the pod with Bill, by the way.
Inexplicably.
Yes. I really like the bowling pod. I was thinking my 5th favorite sport is sumo. And
everybody submit your 5th favorite sport to us, please.
He went down a huge rundown of sumo. Here's what I'll say. If for some reason the NBA season gets put away after it starts, I'm not ruling out sumo. That's what I'd say. And bowling as well. Instead of we normally do the Apple Podcast 5-star rating, 5-star review of the week. Give us a 5-star rating on that Apple Podcast app. We're at 2,683. Instead of that, I wanted to give an email about bowling. I can't imagine how challenging it's been to create fresh content during this crazy pandemic. If not for your loyal audience's entertainment, but more importantly for your own sanity. I thought the recent podcast with Bill O'Neill represented an apex of pandemic original content and feel compelled to let you know how much I appreciated it. So, there you go. We love the bowling. Shout out to Bill, who has dove right in with the anti-PBA stance that we took on the last pod. So
Yeah.
we need to fix that.
I just want to let you know, I forgot that we're filming each other, and I almost tried to sneak in eating a cherry during this podcast.
Please eat it. Please eat it. Please eat the cherry.
No,
Right
too sexual.
Right after talking about your penis, eat the cherry. Somebody said to me, "Hey, I looked at you sneaking drinks in during the podcast." It's like, I'm not. There's a camera. I'm not sneaking it. So, speaking of WIP, so Ike will be on later. Joe and John, our midday show, had Larry Brown on the other day, and I sort of rolled my eyes and purposely didn't listen to it. But then I went through when we had it on our podcast and looked at the quotes. And I got to tell you, Mike, Larry Brown seems to be on a similar page as we are. Some quotes from Larry Brown's interview. Both of these kids, meaning Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, make everybody better. I have a hard time when I read that they can't play together, that maybe we split them up. They're two of the best 10 players in the NBA in my mind.
Surprising to hear.
Right. I admire Brett. I love Philly. I want to see them win. Here's my issue. You can't lose Jimmy Butler, JJ Redick, and TJ McConnell and tell me you're going to be better. They're not only really, really good players, they're really, really great teammates.
Yep. Jimmy Butler, classic teammate.
Which I don't think people take into account enough. But then he gets back on track. I'm a huge Al Horford fan, but he's not a four-man. He had an unbelievable advantage playing center because centers could not guard him and he could guard center. I'm a huge Tobias Harris fan, but he's not a three-man. He can guard four men, but they couldn't guard him. It's a struggle for him to guard three-man. It's a struggle for Al to guard four men. Again, I'm not trying to be critical because I'd have any of those guys on my team I'd ever be involved with. But I think losing those three I mentioned, and I think sometimes with people playing out of position, it affects everything.
Yeah, I mean, mostly that's right. I think sometimes it's a little simplistic, just being like, well, they're all playing out of position. But sometimes the simple answer is the right one. Yeah.
In this era of the NBA, this positionless era, we have a bunch of players who actually do have positions. You know, like Embiid has a position, Horford has a best spot, which is not necessarily to be playing center, but not to be playing with a center, if that makes any sense.
It's just about versatility. It's like we have a bunch of players who, for various reasons, are not versatile. Mm-hmm. Embiid can step out on the perimeter, but he was unwilling to do it defensively, or at least the system that they played was for him to drop in the pick and roll. And then it became just like, okay, Horford, you're playing him on the perimeter a lot, not looking great. And defense wasn't. I mean, I think Tobias had a good season defensively, or at least his best. But it becomes, and then Simmons offensively is not versatile in some ways because he can't stretch the floor, so it limits who you can play alongside him. Like there's just like limits at various stations, and it's like kind of doing like a Sudoku puzzle where it just like doesn't fit. It's just like kind of not. Well, this can't go, this can't go, this can't go, and there's not a happy solution aside from like. I mean, trading Horford for Eric Gordon would be the solution. Like that sounds just really nice.
Do you want to talk about sumo with Sam Kravitz? I've ripped Larry Brown pretty repeatedly over, and there are some quotes in there that were horseshit, but it was the first time I've heard Larry Brown talk and ever agree with him. I mean, maybe since they hired Sam that I've heard him talk, that I've agreed with him. So
yeah, it's not, I expected worse. I always expect worse from Larry Brown. Shake Milton, by the way, upset that he didn't mention Shake, at least in that section that you sent, because Shake went to SMU to be coached by Larry Brown, and then I think Larry left either early on or before he even got there.
Because he broke rules, right?
Because he sucks.
Yeah.
Because he's a guy who sucks. Yeah. I'm always surprised by like lifer basketball guys who don't like talk the game with that much like fluidity and intelligence. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of times that they almost sound like they're dumbing themselves down to talk to a national audience. Well, and I don't know if that's a conscious thing or if that's just like they're just like more, I don't know, elbow grease and you do this and you do that, but that without like actually talking about the finer points of the game in the way that like I think a lot of current coaches can and do talk the game.
So I remember this one time I did this thing at the NovaCare facility, and this was when I was a rock DJ, and they brought a bunch of like media in, and they did this chalk talk thing. And I was in a room in the offensive, I think it was the wide receiver room or something, with Marty Morningweg, with like maybe 6 or 7 other press people. And Marty Morningweg took us through an actual one play of football, of offensive football. And my brain was melting by the end of it. Like, especially when you realize how many plays there are. And I think there is something to, not always, but I think there is something to not being able to really talk in the middle ground about stuff like Larry Brown can, like Larry Brown probably can't. Like, he understands actual basketball, or at least coaching it and drawing up plays and all that kind of stuff, but probably doesn't really understand the dumbed downness like that he could do now. I think people understand basketball better than they used to. And also, I really do think there is this something that they have. Larry Brown was obviously a good coach. He was obviously a good coach. He's a shithead and a bad guy, and disloyal and all of those things, but obviously could coach somehow. I just think that maybe there's this thing that they know and they feel and they get that we don't get. And the languages like don't cross. Does that make any sense? I hear so many former players talking in a way that to me sounds like they don't know what they're talking about, but they obviously know what they're talking about on some level. I don't know what to call, like, I think sometimes we discount certain things that we look at as traditionally stupid, like, grit or clutch or just making shots or something like that to an actual player. And it shows by how much they love like Kyrie Irving, right. Like current players like Kyrie Irving. But I just think there's this language disconnect, or there's this understanding disconnect that makes it hard for them to talk to us about basketball in the same way. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, even I think Ben was like live streaming some game, and somebody asked him about like analytics, and he was like, I don't like it, basically.
Yeah.
Like, well, but you're such a smart defensive player, and like it's all about like angles and positioning, and so like that factors in, and it's all whatever. But I don't know. I think everybody's stubborn in probably the way that they are, and maybe everybody assumes when you talk to the media, you have to, do the TNT stuff where you're talking about like killer instinct and he hasn't won it enough and that kind of thing.
Well, I think also there's probably a thing where the more talented players, the players at least, don't maybe need to care about those things in the same way. Like where a Robert Covington would be like, show me every spot on the floor. And Ben is thinking, well, I'm a good enough athlete. I can remember, and if I don't remember, I can get there, I'm
just excited. I get excited. That's why like one of the reasons I like Dinwiddie so much is that like he does like internalize that. And like you can see him like doing the work and giving a shit about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how can I best maximize? It's just like another tool to use. And it feels, I think a lot of especially star players don't, because they're just like, they're just, when you're in another stratosphere, it's just like, that's who you are. But I wish that guys used it more and were more vocal about it, because it's exciting to talk about.
We never got to talk about Dinwiddie's GoFundMe that I think raised $1,200.
What an odd thing.
He's not even a free agent. And my favorite part was he was only going to give the money to charity.
Wait, explain the situation, because I don't even know that I fully understand it. I saw it and I was like, I don't know that I
it was a month ago. Right. It was a month ago. Okay, so a GoFundMe launches from Spencer Dinwiddie. And he basically says, I'm going to let people pick my team for me. And I want to raise $20 million. And if I raise $20 million in Bitcoin, I think it would have to be Bitcoin or something. If I raise $20 million, you will get to pick my team. And by the way, he's not a free agent this year, so it would have to be in the next year. And he never really gave the apparatus at which all of the GoFundMe donators would get to pick his team.
Totally.
And And he said, if I don't raise the $20 million, I will donate to charity. Which means if he did raise the $20 million, he would get paid the $20 million plus whatever he got paid from the team and keep it all. And he raised like $1,500 and shut it down. And it was active for 2 days, and then he raised like $1,500. Like, we raised $19,000 at the Zoomathon.
and I still get to pick what team I get to go on.
Right.
Very bizarre. And I would have given him, I have so much Bitcoin and I understand so much of it. And it's just something like I intrinsically know and get
Right.
and like can speak to. And so if he just asked me personally, I probably would have given him a quick 2 million of Bitcoin bucks.
We need the Sixers to get Dinwiddie so we can get him on the podcast, so we can just go over the GoFundMe thing. Like that's an hour on the GoFundMe.
Yeah, I want Dinwiddie for a lot of reasons, but that is climbing up the charts for sure.
Joel and Ben, there were some pictures of Ben at the facility lifting weights with his best. Does he go everywhere with Alex Subers? That's my basic.
I think there's 18 Alex Subers just lying around with a photographer. There's a camera just like getting everybody all the time. Looking Matisse look good. Shake.
Somebody.
Like Kylo Quinn coming out of a big truck. Everybody looks good.
Somebody said, "I'll pay $1 million if Alex Suber takes my my Tinder pic." Like Alex Subers will make you look great. Ben was lifting weights. Ben always looking great on social media. But even better.
Back to the red the Mike Scott headband.
Yes, he was wearing he's let the hair grow during quarantine. Could not get a barber in, but had his photographer there.
You could zoom in.
So Joel Embiid, there was an interview on NBA.com, and I want to go over some of those quotes before Ike joins us. We've been going at it for the past 4 weeks, about 6 times a week, just trying to get a head start and ready for whatever's coming. I have something to prove, and I feel like whenever that opportunity comes, it's going to be my time. Mike, do you believe that Joel has been working out 6 times a week for?
I mean, he certainly should be. Like, that's the job. And it's also like, if I can run like 4 or 5 times a week, you can work out. You can say at least like one's a big yoga day or something. I don't know. Yeah. Do something. But I like him saying I have something to prove. Mm-hmm. Generally, when people say I don't feel like I have anything to prove, it's like, well, you do. You should.
Yeah, you have plenty to prove. Yeah,
that's the whole reason you're there, is to like feel like you have a chip on your shoulder and like prove everybody wrong. So I'm glad. I like hearing this version better.
To me, though, it is he sometimes trying to speak these things into existence is what I feel. Mm-hmm. Like when he talks about having fun, and I'm not, and it's something that I think young people do. I think this is being this person at this time, at this age is a hard thing, but I think that's something that he does. He said, I feel like, and I'm trying to remember what the Sixers were like beforehand, because I read this.
Couldn't tell you.
And I didn't remember it like this. He said, I felt like before the season got shut down, I was on that path, especially after the All-Star game. My mentality completely changed. First part of the season wasn't up to my standard, not even close. I was on that path of changing it all, go out and make it happen. Do you remember a change in Embiid toward the end of before the shutdown? I don't.
No, I remember Horford starting to hit some threes. And shake. That's the only thing.
Yeah. And then to one of your requests, they asked him if he watched The Last Dance. And he said, I did watch it. It was interesting. I saw a lot of similarities. And a lot of people have told me that. What's that?
Between who?
I would assume him and Michael Jordan. I'm always quiet about it, but I kind of saw there's a lot of similarities, and I can also be that guy. I just need to keep putting in the work, and that's what I've been doing. It was a great documentary, and I enjoyed it. It's a lot of similarities.
He's less of an he's way quieter.
Yeah.
And less of an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost wish. I mean, I guess there is like the taking it personally angle.
Mm-hmm.
But
I guess.
I feel like, I mean, this isn't like I'm not this guy that says that, but I feel like Michael Jordan wouldn't let Marc Gasol do him like that.
No.
Not that I'm like a Jordan guy and I don't like sip the Kool-Aid or anything, but like I hope that I want him to take that personally, and I want him to go out there and like be the guy he can be. But he's not yet. He hasn't been.
The Rice to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Mike, I went and I looked. They have NBA championship odds on DraftKings Sportsbook on the app, and I looked. And the Sixers are plus 2,800 to win the championship this year, which means they are 28-1. Before the season, they were 10-1. So what that basically means is they're saying if you simulated the season 100 times, the Sixers win the championship like 3 times. So if you think there's a better chance than that, those are good odds. They have the championship odds up there. So I'm waiting for more. I'm waiting for baseball so I can bet on baseball futures too. I have a Houston Astros futures bet. I wonder what's going to happen to it.
That's such a fucking you thing to do.
Yeah. Sports are coming back, but until they're here, MLS coming back the 8th, and there will be MLS odds too. They're coming back with a tournament. But casino games, they have in DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino, endless amount of casino games to play from the comfort and safety of your own home. Right now, first-time casino users at DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino can play risk-free up to $200 for the first 24 hours of casino play. Do you want to hear what I do with blackjack to make sure that I'm winning?
Yeah, I like a blackjack.
So I'll deposit 50. When I get up to 80, I'll withdraw 50. So I know that I'm even. And then I'll just play with that 30. And when I get up to 80 again, I'll withdraw 50 again. So I'm trying to be, what's the word I'm looking for?
Frugal?
Not frugal. I'm trying to be, what's it called when you do the right thing over and over again? Like if you're eating
You're trying
right.
to be like religious about this?
Yeah,
routine?
something like that. You can download the DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino app right now. Find the casino games in the top nav. Right on the front, it says casino. All kinds of options: slots, blackjack, roulette, table games with live dealers, and more. Legal, safe, and you withdraw money. It's in your account like almost immediately.
And it's so much better than going to Las Vegas right now.
Yes.
Which people are
there's
doing.
Ike.
Oh, there I am. I'm good to go now, man.
Yeah. Okay. Let us finish this commercial. We're doing a commercial. Hold on. We'll wrap it up.
What the hell?
It is. It is better than going to an actual casino. In the comfort of your own home, promotions every day. Check the app daily. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino app now. Use promo code RTRS to play up to $200 of casino games risk-free. That's promo code RTRS to play risk-free up to $200 your first 24 hours of casino play on DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, Pennsylvania only, in partnership with Hollywood Casino at Penn National Racecourse. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Ladies and gentlemen, Ike Reese.
Wow.
What's up, fellas?
What's up, man? Thank you
Can
for
y'all
joining
hear me?
us.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Awesome. Yeah, loud and clear. Loud and clear.
So let me ask you this. I want to ask you a very important question to start. An honest answer. I'm going to give you 3 sort of like career highlights from you, and you tell me which is the most important of your career.
Okay.
So 1, you were an All-Pro once with the Eagles.
Yeah.
Also, you got number one in the afternoon time slot at WIP with John Marks.
Okay.
And then the third one is you gave a Process Hall of Fame induction speech for the Rights to Ricky Sanchez Process Hall of Fame induction at the Franklin Music Hall. So which of those 3 things are you most proud of? Your induction speech for the Process Hall of Fame, your number 1 book, or the All-Pro?
Come on, man. That's a no-brainer. The induction speech to the Hall of Fame, Rights to Ricky Sanchez. Come on, baby.
There you go.
Come on, man. Listen, I feel like I'm an honorary member of this crew here somehow,
You are,
man.
Yeah.
And it's a long time coming, especially because our names all rhyme, which is a weird thing.
Oh yeah.
I never even thought of that. How about that?
Yeah.
Mike, Spike, and Ike. I like
There you
that.
are.
I
how are you doing in all this? How are you at with the quarantine, and just where's your head at right now?
Oh, you know what? I am surprisingly doing pretty good. I think there was probably more concern when you looked at it 3 months ago, and Spike can tell you when we're sitting there trying to figure out, man, how are we going to get through, months and weeks of sports talk radio without any live sports going on. But I got to be honest, man, I've been amazed at how we've been able to keep it fresh, keep it light, and actually have people tuning in and looking forward to the show. So, not because he's on here and he's my boss, but Spike has done a tremendous job of really just steering this thing for the station over the last 3 months and really coming up with fresh, obviously getting input from all of the talk show hosts, but just coming up with fresh ideas so that we all look forward to coming into work and having something to plan for without any live sports. If you're to ask me 3 months ago, would we have been able to do some of the shows that we've done, the topics that we've done that have gone on for weeks? There's no way I would have thought we would have been able to sell that to the listening audience. But it's been beyond what I thought the response would be from our listeners. And it just goes to show you that, sports are important, but I think the camaraderie and the community of talking about or going through something together is just as important. And the great thing about our listening audience, man, is we managed to get through this together, talking about the things we've talked about and having them participate. So it's, and by the way, I mean, my life hasn't changed a whole lot other than I don't have to take the family out to dinner and things of that nature. I mean, what I do pretty much is go to work, come home, look at TV, go back to work. I mean, that's pretty much what I did prior to the pandemic.
And what is it like having a boss like Spike when you had, in your 20s and 30s, you were looking up to like Hugh Douglas, Jeremiah Trotter, John Runyon, and now you're like this fucking guy, the one telling you what to do.
Let me get something straight. First of all, I never looked up to Hugh Douglas, Jeremiah Trotter, or John Runyon. I mean, those are my contemporaries. I don't really look up to guys.
Sure.
Yeah, but I get the point that you're making. You know what? I actually view Spike just like I view those guys, and I've been with him much longer than I played with those guys. Spike and I met years upon years ago before we even ever had a chance to work together. And he used to call me or text me when I was arguing with his dad on the air at times and beg me not to kill his father when we were on air at the same time, but also agreeing with me with some of the things that we argued over. So, with Spike, it's we were friends long before he was in the position that he's in right now as being my boss. And I cherish that much more. It's the friendship that we have that I cherish because I got to see him come from, being at YSP and being mainly a music guy to running the #1 sports station on the East Coast. I mean, what this guy has done in the capacity of the job that he's had.
This isn't WIP now. You can just say,
No. Here's the thing, Mike. Here's the funny thing. As smart as I knew Spike was, and as much as we loved arguing, debating about LeBron and Kobe and Michael and all these other things, not even I thought Spike could do what he's been doing. And I don't mean that as a slight towards him. I just mean the job he's done in being the program director at WIP, since he's taken over. I didn't see the lineup that he decided to put together, the vision that he had. What I did, Mike, was I trusted him, and I trusted his vision. And he has shown us that we should show more and more confidence in some of the ideas that he brings about. I mean, look at this, Rice to Ricky Sanchez, man. I was mocking him when he decided to do this years ago, man. Like, are you crazy? Like, this guy has a following unlike I've ever seen before, man. So, Spike and I are friends, but I also know the role he plays at our station, and it's the most valuable role in my opinion.
Thank you. I will say that I put Ike through a couple of ringer like situations where my favorite one. So Ike has been in afternoons for a few years now, and his first afternoons co-host was Chris Carlin, and eventually Carlin got summoned back to New York to work for WFAN, and like it was just when Ike and Chris were like they had gotten a rhythm. They had been working for like a year together, and I asked Ike to meet me at a diner in South Jersey, and he had to know at that moment that something was wrong.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, Carlin's leaving. And he was just like, okay. And I was like, here's what I think we should do. And he was like, all right. And like ultimate team player. I say this all the time, and then we'll get to like actual content, but there are a lot of people who, this is exactly what I say about Ike. There are a lot of former players who end up doing media, and they're a former player who does media. But Ike now is a media who happened to be a player at one point. And you can just tell by how he argues on the air. Like if I played professional football for the Eagles and I was an all-pro and somebody said something to me that disagreed with me, that told me I was wrong, I would every time go, you fucking idiot. Don't you know that I actually know how to play football? But Ike doesn't do that. So it's either that, yeah. So that, I think that takes either a lot of skill or he's been doing it so long, he realizes what we do. But that's a thing that there's not a lot of players that do. Like there's not a lot of players that actually make that full on transition to now this person is a host, and Ike's been able to do it. So,
no, I appreciate that. I got to admit, in the 12 plus years I've been doing this, I think maybe once I've said, you do realize I played, right? But it wasn't I don't know if it was to a host or maybe a caller, but I think I may have said it once. But I remember before I started doing this, I felt like that's low-hanging fruit for somebody who used to play. And I feel like, I'm a fan first and foremost. Before I was a player, I was a fan of the game. And I have so much, I don't know what it is. I don't know if admiration or appreciation or respect, or maybe it's all of those things combined for sports fans and their passion for sports, that to me, it takes the fun away from debating and arguing your point of view if you have to resort to saying, I played and you didn't. Like, what's the fun in doing that? Like, there's no fun in doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, quite frankly, I think I was a better basketball player than I was a football player.
Wow.
I mean, and Spike will tell you that. I argue probably harder for basketball than I do for football.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Well, as a comedy writer, I've definitely told people like, well, I know what's funny. This is my job. I do it for a living. And so I maybe I take the low-hanging fruit a little too often for that.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's all good. No, listen, hey, Mike, sometimes you do have to remind people, like, hold on.
Gotta remind them.
Yeah, because listen, I got a producer who's like 13 years old, and this guy thinks he actually think he was a real athlete, and I have to remind him sometimes, like, dude, Little League don't count. Little League doesn't count, buddy.
So I have to ask you, so I'm listening, I'm in the car today, I'm listening, and I heard Soapbox Ike, and Soapbox Ike went into the Sixers, and he was talking about how they have this opportunity now, and he thinks they're going to come, like they have a bigger advantage than anybody because they're young and they can reset. And what it was very positive. It was like, and I have to ask you, was that real Ike, or was that talking himself into it so he can feel good about it, Ike? Are you really?
That's 100% Ike talking himself in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's 100%.
Yeah, we got to do it. That's the job.
Yeah, that's like my glass half full, and I'm saying to myself, well, okay, Embiid is usually at his best at the beginning of the seasons. And so, I mean, what is this, 4 months off that he'll have before they get back to playing?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll probably get like the beginning of the season Embiid when this thing takes off. So I'm kind of hanging my hope onto that. Yeah.
My rationale is that everyone's gonna be bad, so you may as well be bad with like a bunch of big guys blocking the rim. It's like, well, at least it's like you go shoot out there, but you're gonna be missing because they're all bad at this point.
Well, I will say this: earlier in the day, I kind of let my true feelings out when I quote tweeted Tom Kelly, because he was all excited about Ben Simmons, tweeting out, the emoji with the smoke coming out the nose. Tom was like, well, I hadn't seen this in a while, so he was excited about it. He couldn't hold into the excitement for the playoffs. And my reply to that was, well, unless he's a willing jump shooter, Celtics in 6. This thing is over with in the first round in 6. So that's kind of Ike in the morning when you get the true, my true feelings going in the morning. Yeah, that was me this morning.
So you get more optimistic as the day goes on.
Yes, I do. Yes.
I'm the opposite.
I talks himself into things. Because I was actually going to ask you about Ben, because Mike, what you think about like the players that I like. So it's funny. Ike knows me as Covington guy, but Mike knows me as the guy that likes chuckers. Like I like Isaiah Cannon and Tony Roten, and that's actually what Ike likes. Like Ike likes bucket getters.
Yes.
You must like. So we've never really talked about Ben, me and you, but as a guy who, even in practice, because I've seen you in police athletic league games shoot, even with kids on the court, with other kids, just not pass up a shot.
That's true.
As a guy who really respects getting buckets and shooting, all that stuff, not shooting, but getting buckets, because he disrespects Curry every once in a while. What do you think about a guy like Ben? Like, what is when you watch him and not shoot, like, what do you think of him? We've never even talked about Ben.
I'll tell you the thing that frustrates me with Ben, and the reason why I wasn't so excited about Ben Simmons when he was coming out, because you remember I was more of a Brandon Ingram guy when those two guys were coming out, because Brandon was viewed more as a scorer. And watching Ben Simmons in college, and it's actually coming to the NBA as well, he is more of a facilitator. And I'm okay with that. I don't mind. I think he can be a tremendous passer when he wants to be. But in today's game, if you're going to be a true superstar player, I got to be able to put the ball in your hands, and you have to be able to go and get me baskets. And you have to be able to go on 8-2, 10-2, 12-4 runs on your own, meaning you can take 5 straight trips down the court, and you have an array of moves in your repertoire where you can get buckets, whether it's at the rim, whether it's free throw line extended, whether it's three-point shooting, whether it's getting to the line and shooting free throws. Like, those are the things you have to be able to do in order for me to be excited about you as a player. And with Ben, it's no secret that he doesn't have the sort of thirst for scoring. And there's nothing wrong with that. He is much more apt to be more of a do-it-all, Swiss Army knife, give you a little bit of this, give you a little bit of that, including on the defensive end. It's just, that's more of a role player to me. Like, that's more – now, I'm not saying he's a role player, but I'm just saying in today's game where scoring is easier, you don't have as much of a restriction at the basket to score, and you have to be able to shoot. His scoring comes almost as a surprise, and he's okay with getting 13, 10, and 8. Like, he's okay with doing that. That's more Jason Kidd than it is what he was built as coming out of college. And I think I'm a victim of this. We fall prey to the hype machine, and when kids are coming out of college and we want to prop them up or compare them to somebody, when you start comparing Ben Simmons to LeBron James, I mean, LeBron James will more than likely be the number 1 or 2 scorer all time when you look at all-time points. As much as a facilitator as he is, he still has found a way to turn up his scoring when needed, when it needs to be. And that's what I was sort of expecting out of Ben Simmons when I first watched him play, and then the more you watched him play, you realize he's okay with deferring or not being as aggressive.
As a guy who, like, you know, basketball and football, different kinds of team sports, but everyone has to fill their role in football as well. Even on the defensive end, you got to, like, you know, if you blow up a couple blockers, then that makes the play so somebody else can get the tackle.
Sure.
Is there like a sense of I'd rather play with a guy like Ben who's willing to, like, drive to kick, that engenders more of a, like, a team united, like, I'm happy that we all get a piece of what we want type thing.
Totally agree. I totally agree with that, Mike. And what I had to do was, I think it was in Ben's the second year that he played. I said to myself, you just have to accept Ben for what he is.
Right.
Right. And so I'm actually okay, because now I don't necessarily have the generational player label going along with it. He doesn't have to be LeBron James, right? So now I can accept Ben Simmons as a guy that's going to give me 16, 8, and 8, and a couple of steals on the other end. His athleticism on the defensive end is certainly needed on the perimeter. I can appreciate what he does in the other areas of basketball a little more now than I did when he first came into the league, when, in my mind, all I'm looking for is a generational player who wants to give me 25, 30 points a game.
Right.
It's more or less like you need to surround Ben with the type of players that will accentuate what he does well. And so I actually think you can win with him as your co-star.
Yeah.
He is more like, and I didn't realize this until The Last Dance, he's Scottie Pippen. I mean, that's who he is. And I don't mean that as in a demeaning way. You look at the length, you look at the ball handling skills.
Yeah.
You look at the defensive end. Like, he is Scottie Pippen. That's who he is.
Totally. And like Scottie, in that 16 or so game stretch that the Sixers won going in his rookie year, when he was the guy, It was like that offense is humming. He actually can play on that level. But it becomes when the playoffs come, Scottie wasn't as, Scottie's a great player, one of the best ever, but like,
not the guy.
Not the guy.
Yeah. And quite frankly, Scottie, he took jump shots, but he struggled to hit shots from the outside too.
Right.
What was I gonna? Oh yeah. So you brought up LeBron. So some of Ike and I have had a lot of
my favorite player to talk about.
Yeah, Ike and I have had a lot of basketball arguments over the years. Some actually scary in their volume. But one of the ones we always used to have was when I was a pro LeBron guy, and Ike is until recently a Lakers fan. I grew up in Cincinnati, so Lakers fan, huge Kobe guy.
I'm
not going to say anything.
You just said he grew up in Cincinnati, so Lakers fan. Why is that?
They don't have a basketball team.
That's my excuse, Mike. Yes, we don't have a basketball team. No.
Okay.
So huge Kobe guy, and hated LeBron. Like couldn't stand LeBron, like almost Howard Eskin levels of ranking LeBron like 11th all time or something like that. So LeBron goes to the Lakers and Ike swears off the Lakers. And I have to ask, almost a full season in, have there been moments where like, you're like, you know what, I'm going to go back. I'm going to be a Laker or
what?
Nothing.
What?
Are they done forever? I guess that's my question.
Dunzo forever. Forever. Look what I showed up in tonight. I got my Process t-shirt on tonight, man. My Embiid. Yeah, Lakers done forever, man. And here's how I was able to do it, Spike. I mean, sometimes you got to just grow up, right? Like I can let go. I can let go of my childhood Laker thing. Because it started with Magic, because I didn't like the Celtics, so I jumped on the Lakers bandwagon with Magic and all those guys.
And the culture of Cincinnati just bleeds purple and gold.
Well, listen, I'm just being honest with you, Mike. I was a bandwagon guy. I'm not gonna lie.
You take Lakers over Celtics any day of the week at that point. I'm fine with that.
But here's the thing. It also, when Kobe retired, it allowed me to move on. It made it easier to let the Lakers go, right? And then, it wasn't as if they added some fresh new player that was going to be as great as a Magic, Shaq, or Kobe. And and when LeBron decided to go there, that really gave me the excuse to really just let it go. That really just let me know, it's time to move on. Kobe's not playing anymore. There's no need to be a Lakers fan. You can move on. And now, listen, I'm a Sixers fan, 100%, all the way in Sixers fan.
All right. Before we continue, we have one more sponsor to talk about, and then we'll get to the rest of this. Okay. So our original sponsor, the Rights to Ricky Sanchez original sponsor, LL Pavorsky Jewelers, been with us for years and years and years, 5 or 6 years. Yesterday he told me he sold his 177th engagement ring to a Rights to Ricky Sanchez listener. So
that's a lot.
Yeah, he's actually been quiet over the last few weeks, but the most recent one he's been working on for a few months. The good news is that LL Pavorsky, once again, the physical store open by appointment only, though. So that way he can sanitize in between every customer, and he can make sure you're the only customer in there. I've seen LL with his face shield and his mask at the same time. I feel like I want to make
pretty good.
Yeah, with the suit. How do you get the candy in with the face shield? In any case, I want to make an appointment just so I can see LL in the face shield. But he's ready, man. Summer's a great time to propose. It's a great time to propose. Anytime's a great time to propose, but summer's a great time to propose. And I feel like if you've made it to the end of the quarantine with the girl or guy, and you still are into them, it's time to propose. Like it's time to do it. So reach out to LL. He's a good man. He will take care of you. 215-627-2252, 215-627-2252, or email him lee@llpavorsky.com. He's also on Twitter @llpavorsky. And remember, you can go into the store now, only if you want to, appointment only, or he can do the appointment over video. And for every podcast, he donates to our charities, Coded by Kids, and the Providence Animal Center. LL Pavorsky Jewelers,
the Reno Mahe of jewels.
Oh, I like that. I believe that.
Overrated, underrated, Mark Simoneau.
Overrated, underrated. Why is he rated?
Just asking.
I mean, is he rated? I don't know. I can't say he's overrated, right?
There you go. Overrated, underrated, Billy McMullen.
What are you doing to me, man?
All right. Well, that'll be it for overrated, underrated.
These are all good young players, man. I don't want to call them overrated or underrated.
Not that young anymore.
Listen, I don't even know if Billy McMullen played. Did he play?
Not much. Not enough. I think they took him in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I know. I don't even remember how long did he stay with us. 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, not enough.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go with overrated. Yeah, let's go with overrated. Yeah. Mark Simmons. Oh yeah, let's go with overrated too. Let's go.
Bang.
With overrated.
Got him.
Yeah, there we go.
Was Mark Simoneau the one that was married to Brigitte Nielsen, or is that someone else?
Brigitte Nielsen
from Rocky IV.
Yeah, that's. Oh no, you're talking about. No, you're talking about Mark Gastineau.
Mark Gastineau. That's right. All right.
Yeah. who one day called up me and John because he was down here in Philadelphia, and I think he was getting treatment over at he was getting I think he has cancer, some type of cancer, so he was down here to get treatment down here in Philadelphia. And so I want to say he was coming back from treatment from somewhere, and he just happened to be in the car listening to the show that day. And I don't know if we brought up his name out of the blue or just talking about something related to sacks in football, but Mark Gastineau called up the show out of nowhere. We didn't even know whether or not to take the call.
Because whether it was him.
Yeah, we didn't know if it was him or not. But yeah, it was Mark Gastineau.
All right, can I ask you
not like it was Dr. J when the old white guy called.
Let me tell you. Mike, we will play the audio on the next pod. There was Ike's old producer when Carlin was hosting was a guy named Ben, and Ben thought he had a phone number for Dr. J, and he said that he booked Dr. J. So everybody's excited they're going to have Dr. J. Chris and Ike are going to have Dr. J. And Chris goes, Dr. J, Julius Erving, welcome to the show. And he goes, hi, guys. Hold on a minute. And he is clearly like not Dr. J. Like he sounded like Hank Hill from King of the Hill. Like, and Ike's like, that's not Dr. J. That's not Dr. J. And Chris was ready to keep going. It was one of the best moments I've ever heard on the radio. I just like,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Okay. Sort of a serious question. Cause like we haven't even talked about this. So last week, the protests happened all over after, the George Floyd, thing in Minneapolis. And we talked about it a lot on WIP, and you talked about it actually before the protest started, the Thursday or Friday before. We actually talked about that on the show when you brought it up. We talked about the time when you brought it up before the protest really started. And then the protest happened, and we all talked about it on IP. Did you? I guess going into it as now like a really prime host, it's really like you and Angelo are the guys that have been on WIP the longest. Like you have this, you're in Afternoon Drive and all of this. Did you feel a weight going into that show? Like what did that feel like after that weekend? Especially after the talk you had given before the weekend, like what did it feel like going into that and throughout that week?
Yeah, there is a certain weight that you feel like you're carrying when you have a platform, the platform that I have. You're speaking to hundreds of thousands of people throughout the course of a week, and one of the biggest markets for radio in the entire country. And we have this going on in our backyard, and to be in the position that I am as an African-American and as a former player, you feel a sense of responsibility and weight to do this the right way, right? Like that was the biggest thing for me, Spike. That was the biggest thing for me. And it's the reason why I waited the prior weekend to the protests happening all across the country, including in our city. I waited to the end of the week because earlier in the week, and George Floyd passed, I believe on Monday, was killed on Monday. The emotions were too raw earlier in the week, right? And so I may be having certain conversations at home, over the phone with former teammates or family members or what have you, and you see what's going on, and it's yet to hit the nation like it would hit 4 or 5 days later. What I kept saying to myself was, okay, you want to do this the right way. In other words, you want to make sure that your words have the impact you want them to have, but it can't be lost in emotion. So my whole thing was, earlier in the week, I wasn't necessarily ready to come across in a manner in which I thought would bring people together, right? In the earlier stages, more or less, you're mad because you see another unarmed African-American senselessly being murdered by police brutality with a knee being on his throat for nearly 9 minutes. Like there's anger in you initially. And that's not good to necessarily, when you have the platform that I have, to display anger as your first reaction to it. It's not always good. It's raw, it's real, but at the same time, what I ultimately want to get across is pain. I want people who I'm talking to understand this is a pain that my race, that people that look like me are going through right now. And sure, anger was there too, but I didn't want that to be at the forefront, because what I wanted was empathy. I wanted anybody that heard me to feel what I was feeling from a pain standpoint and what a lot of people in the Black community was feeling. And I knew it was time to do it. And it's crazy. But when Carson and Zach tweeted out what they tweeted out, I said, they're ready to hear me. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now, you got to realize, Spike, there's a fear that comes along with, even when you know you're doing something right, and this is why I applaud the people who take stands like a Colin Kaepernick, all the players in 2017 when they were going against what public opinion wanted them to do. In the face of that, man, those guys need to be commended, because that's not easy to do when you go to stand alone and you get blowback, you get brushed back. But when Carson and Zach did what they did, to me it said, well, they just took a chance of being ridiculed and criticized by the masses for standing up for someone that they can't identify with. That took courage to me. I appreciated that, because that somehow freed me to let my raw emotions and feelings go and express that Friday. And so I was happy I did it that Friday, because the weekend, really, we saw what happened that first weekend of the protest. And I was actually more at ease the following week than I was that first week. Because here's the thing, Spike. When you're in this time slot that I'm in, and there's a double-edged sword there. That's a coveted spot, but it's also a spot that comes with responsibility. And when it calls for you to step up and have a voice, you got to have that. You got to accept that responsibility. But I'll be honest with you, man. It's not anything to do with fandom of Carson's or what have you. It had more to do with, he was the first prominent white athlete in the NFL at that position to step up and say something.
Well, the thing I was talking to one of the gentlemen that works at one of the charities we support last week. The thing that makes it so hard, I think, for people like Carson or even any white person of privilege to understand is that when they see a police officer, unless they're being pulled over for speeding, most times they feel safer. Like if you're walking on a dark street at night, when you see an officer, you're like, okay, I'm going to be fine. And it's the exact opposite feeling that we're talking about, that you're talking about when you think about you or your sons or something like that. And that's why it's so hard to get it across. And then especially somebody like Carson, who comes from the middle of nowhere,
right?
You know, like
right.
farmland in the middle of nowhere, has never even conceived of this. So maybe we shouldn't even be talking about this on a podcast, but I've never asked you this. So you look around at IP, right? And I'm a white guy and John's a white guy, your producers are white guys, and like the two guys that are on you are before white guys. Like, do you look around and think to yourself, well, there's more pressure on me for something that I have to say? Or like, what is it like in a,
Sure.
for you when something like that happens and you're at least during the time that you're on, you know, in that window, you're the guy. You know, we have Sonny and we have Billy and we have Sean, we have other guys, but you're the only guy in that prime spot. What is that like?
No, that is a pressure. That is a pressure. And it may be self-inflicted pressure, because I do look around and I say, well, hell, if you don't speak up, who the hell's going to speak up, right? If you don't say something, who else is going to say something? So I don't know if pressure is the first word I would think of. I know there's a responsibility, right? To me, there's a responsibility there. And there are times when we are, and here's the tricky part, because we are a sports radio station. So there are times when things go on in Black communities that I myself and my family may discuss at home, that may be prevalent in our household, and that we're discussing, that involves race, that involves lack of equality, that involves police brutality, that doesn't necessarily involve an athlete, that I can't necessarily come on the air talking about it, even though I know it's going on. So it just so happened that this sort of intertwines with the athletes, and we're at a time where there are no sports going on, that it said to me, here now is a better time than ever to be able to speak up or feel okay to speak up and say something. Because any other time, if I'm talking about Fernando Castillo, if I'm talking about Walter Scott, if I'm talking about Breonna Taylor, and there are games going on, now I'm forcing a topic into a sports talk radio station that nobody really wants to necessarily focus in on other than the Black community. So there's always a balance of trying to, okay, obviously you got an audience you want to cater to, but then we also have social consciousness that, okay, how do you not allow that to bleed over into what people view as an escape away from things that are going in the real world versus what should be important to everyone, which is human life. This just happened to be, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's almost the perfect time, because of what we're all in the pandemic, for us to address this. Like, we don't have anything else to distract us from this. It's the biggest thing going on in our country. So it kind of gives, I honestly, Spike, I think it gives all of us the freedom and the ability to feel empowered to say it now. And I think that's why you have more athletes speaking out. You have more people speaking out on it, because there's nothing else to distract us from it. We all feel empowered to finally go hard about this. And so I think that allowed us to do it. I think it allowed us to address some things that we've conveniently been able to put to the side and not have to address because of the ugliness of it. It's like, no, now is the time to address it, right? Now is the time to address what could all help us be better, even if it makes us uncomfortable in the moment.
Do you feel like it's enough, and this is a personal question, so I'm sure everyone would disagree on this or have their own opinion. Do you feel like it's enough for non-Black folks to simply condemn racism? Because, like, Krispy Kreme and Bed Bath & Beyond or whatever are putting out statements like, we're fucking there. We believe all the right stuff. Please be nice to us and keep buying our shit. And then a lot of people are, whatever, posting a black square and being like solidarity, and then kind of been like, solved it, right? Like, yeah. How do you feel about saying that, which is in the history of this country, maybe like a big deal for some people to say, including Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz?
Sure.
But like, what's the next step of like, okay, well, let's actually do something about it?
Sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. And now, Mike, you're right. I think it's easy to try to be on the right side of this thing when you kind of feel where the public is headed at with this, right? So obviously no one wants to be viewed as a racist. No one, I mean, it's such a nasty term that I can see why people want to run away from it. But the fact of the matter is, racism still exists. And to your point about hearing people speak about it and acknowledge it, that's the first step. I liken it to, Drew Brees' apology, right? He sort of said what he truly felt in the moment, right? And then he caught the backlash from it and realized how offensive it was to so many people. Not that it was offensive, because he knew that too. He's smart enough to know that saying that doing this was disrespectful to the flag would offend people. I don't think he envisioned the number of people that he would offend who looks like him. And that includes people he works with and people he intends to work for in the future. So he needed to walk that back. That's totally understandable. Here's the thing. If we aren't going to give people the ability to acknowledge something they may not have been very, I don't know, that they had enough knowledge about or they may not have recognized, and we don't give them the ability to do that and then act upon it, then in my opinion, we are getting lost in what we are saying is our ultimate goal. If our ultimate goal is equality, equality includes people that don't look like us. So you got to give them the opportunity to, what I mean by equality, I mean when you want us to be all the same, that means we're going to need people who aren't from our background, who don't have our experiences to view us the way they view themselves. And we got to give them the opportunity to understand our pain and where we're coming from. And then we watch them. So to your point, whether it's Carson Wentz, who said the right things in the moment, whether it's Drew Brees, who backtracked, or whether it's all these companies, well, okay, for all these companies who say they stand with Black Lives Matters and all this and that and the other, well, we're not going to go check your employee profile to see how many African Americans are employed by you, how many of them are on your board of trustees, decision makers, because we know that that can't be done like a light switch. But maybe over time, in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, we're looking back and now there's a track record that could be established and now we can judge you. So here's the thing, Mike. George Floyd wasn't the first. There's a list of men and women that came before George Floyd, and George Floyd won't be the last, sadly. So when it does happen again, then, you're going to get an opportunity to actually show and prove where you stand right now. It's easy to stand in this position right now, but 6 months from now, a year from now, 2-3 years from now, we're going to be watching. I don't know how you make someone do something other than public pressure, but I tell you what I've liked about this more than anything is that I think our younger generation, who are the future of this country and this world moving forward, I do believe in them. I do believe in the kids that are my kids' ages, right? I do believe in them. I do believe that they don't necessarily want to be saddled with something they aren't necessarily responsible for creating. So I believe they do want change. That this generation coming up is so much more tolerant than the generations that came before them. I mean, they are tolerant of whether you're same-sex marriage, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, they are tolerant of each other. They embrace one another, this next generation. And I think that's hope for the future. I don't know if you can change someone that's 50, 60, 70 years old that's been thinking a certain way for 30, 40, 50 years. We're not necessarily, it's going to be more difficult to change those mindsets, but the people who are in our position and the ones that are coming up after us, those are the ones who ultimately matter if we're talking about our kids growing up in a better place than what our mothers, our grandmothers, and our grandfathers did prior to us.
I think it's crazy to think, like, I've actually seen in the 7 or 8 years I've been at WIP a change. Like, we had an openly gay afternoon show producer at WIP. Like, he talked about it on air. Like, we conversations.
Did?
Ben. Yes.
Oh, I didn't even know Ben was gay. Ben was gay?
You're fuck you. Well, but I can't imagine 25 years ago or 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago that would have ever been the case. Like, things are a million miles from where they should be for Black people, for gay people, like a million miles where they should be. But I do, like, if you take a step back, I think we have seen, you're talking about young people, like Ben never had two thoughts about being who he was at WIP. And like, that is a bravery that I think young people, been brought up in a world where they don't think twice about it. You know, like, I look at my sister, my 22-year-old sister's posts on Facebook, and she's fucking pissed off about police and George Floyd. And like, I'm looking at her and looking at what it was like when I was 22, and it's just not the same world.
I agree.
Now, hopefully it doesn't take another 25 years. That's not acceptable, but it does seem like, I agree with you. Young people, I think have been brought up in a different world than we have, in a world where they've had the internet and connectivity the entire time, and been able to see people that are different than them the entire time, even if they didn't go to school with people that are different than them. So I think that they are a key, you know?
No, I completely agree. I think the biggest issue for us right now, and when I say us, I mean minorities, is fighting against what, I mean, listen, it's a hot term out there, systematic racism, right? Where you're talking about the system being stacked against minorities. It makes it harder for them to stay out of the system, right? With crime and everything else. I think that's one of the things that the African American community is really fighting against. That, okay, I'm already fighting an uphill battle based on where I live at, the opportunities for employment, how much state funds are dedicated to education in those communities, in the inner city communities, to where you're gonna have an opportunity to have the American dream. And it won't be as hard to where you don't give up on the American dream, right? Like that's probably the biggest thing that the African American community is trying to fight, is really being able to live the American dream, where it says, I have the same opportunity as you to be as successful as I want to be, to go to school, if I do the hard work, if I do all these things, I'm going to get the same opportunities. And systematically, it's not necessarily set up that way. And again, it's not a light switch that you can flip that's going to change everything. It's going to have to start at the top with policies and all these other things that will trickle down to allowing economic growth. That's really what it's about, economic growth, and having the opportunity to be successful, so you're not living a life of crime. You're not living in poverty. You're not looked upon as less than because you don't have the same economic status as others. When a lot of people grow up in certain areas of the city, there's already a better likelihood that they remain in that area than it is they get out alive and go be successful. Like, it's like there are areas where you're fighting against systematic racial oppression that it's hard to fight through. And I come from that environment, so I know how hard it is. I know how much help I needed, and I know how fortunate I needed to be. But everybody can't run and jump and tackle and shoot basketballs to the point where they're going to get a free education that's going to allow them to realize the American dream. There are people that want to go to school, they want to be architects, they want to be scientists, they want to be doctors, they want to be lawyers, that those dreams are crushed before they even get out of elementary, because the elementary system is so bad. And my wife has been a teacher in the elementary system in Camden School District. And so I know from her experiences as a teacher and trying to bring kids up through that system to give them a better chance, how difficult it can be. So there's a lot that has to be done there. Right. It's a good start, but to your point, Mike, it can't be a feel-good moment for everybody right now. This thing has to touch people personally in the same manner 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now.
Absolutely.
So we're going to let you go. We're going to wrap it up. We appreciate all your time after you spent 4 hours talking.
It's time to go?
Oh, come on.
What?
Well, one before you, final thing, You can pick one thing. The Sixers in the playoffs this year either lose in the first round or get to the finals. What do you think is more likely?
Which Ike you want? You want the real answer? Or?
I think that's the answer.
We got the answer.
We got to go. Thank you so much, Ike. Really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, man. Mark,
how do I get the hell out of here?
You can just close it. There you go. You're good. Marks and Reese is 94 WIP 2-6. Are you down with TTP?
Yeah. You know, lick face.
Stop